Hey, this is James, the founder of Sweetfish Media. If you've listened to B2B Growth for a while, you probably have an idea of what we're passionate about. Loving people really well, a constant pursuit of learning, and inspiring people to own their careers. With all the craziness happening with this virus, we are incredibly fortunate to be in the business of podcasting. So many B2B brands are looking for alternatives to their in-person events that are being canceled, and our business is growing as a result. Please don't mishear me on this, because I'm not saying this to brag. It is heartbreaking, the economic impact this is having on so many businesses. But being in the business of podcasting, the demand for what we do has increased. And because of that, we're looking to hire really talented people to help us serve that demand. So if you like what we're all about at Sweetfish and you're looking for a great career opportunity, hit us up. There's a link in the show notes where you can apply today. I'm really looking forward to meeting you. Welcome back to B2B Growth. I'm Logan Lyles with Sweetfish Media. I'm joined today by Hemal Shah. He's the VP of Business Development at SMARTe. Hemal, how's it going today, sir?
Going good, except for the fact that, the world has turned upside down over the last maybe 4 weeks. But apart from that, everything good.
Man, the last few weeks have definitely been crazy. I woke up, I'm in Colorado here in the States, and we woke up to the mandatory stay-at-home order in our state, which has been escalating across different states here in the U.S. over the last week or so. But, thankfully, we're still able to share great content with folks in the podcasting format. So wherever we are quarantined, both recording and listening, just thankful for that today. And on that note, we're going to be talking about current data privacy regulations as it becomes more and more important for marketers to connect with their prospects and their customers on digital channels that they can still engage with despite what's going on in the world. They still need to think about the privacy regulations that are impacting how they use that data, how they communicate with those customers. We're going to be unpacking some things that marketers need to be thinking about today. To give a little bit of context on why you're the guy talking about these things and what marketers should be thinking about, give us a little context, a little background on yourself, Hemal, and what you and the SMARTe team are up to these days.
Sure, absolutely. So first of all, about me. So I've been selling data solutions for the last, I would say, 17 years of my career, and different type of data solutions, spend data solutions, invoice data solutions. And then over the last 7 years, selling a lot of marketing data solutions, lead gen solutions. And 2-3 years back, there was a lot of noise around data privacy, right? Because when we are talking about marketing data, we are talking about personal data, people data, PII information, email addresses, phone numbers, etc. And there are, of course, a lot of privacy concerns. And I think since 2018, there is a law in place, GDPR, and there are many other similar type of laws in different types of the world. So people are getting concerned, but SMARTe as a company has always been a responsible data partner, right? So we are 15 years in the business, data business. And then even before all these different privacy laws came into play, especially GDPR, we were actually delivering that type of data. So I can give examples of, one of our clients that we signed up as early as 2011, right? And they are actually headquartered in Germany. I don't wish to take their name, but they were always asking for, the GDPR compliant type of double opted in, double consented data. So we were delivering that data right since 2011. So when all these laws actually kicked in, it was actually a blessing in disguise for us because we were more prepared as a company than, many other, I would say, vendors in this space. And so it's kind of blessing in disguise. And thankfully, fortunately, business is only growing.
Awesome. Thank you for that context, Hemal. And it does make sense, that you guys were a little bit ahead of things there. And so I think that's even more context for folks on why you want to share about this today. The first thing I know you wanted to talk about, you talked about GDPR. It was, everything that you could do to avoid any LinkedIn post there for a while last year. on GDPR. One of the things specifically as it relates to GDPR, I know you wanted to unpack a little bit, is this term legitimate interest and what that really means and the importance of it. Can you unpack that term a little bit for folks that maybe have heard it, not quite completely sure what that means for their data privacy approach in their marketing operations?
Absolutely. So while everybody is concerned about, consented data, double opt-in data, which are of course requirements under GDPR, but as far as B2B marketeers are concerned, there has been some flexibility, right? So when the law came in place, there was a lot of confusion whether it applies in the world of B2C or B2B. And this podcast predominantly is for the B2B audience, right? So for B2B, there has been some flexibility, especially in the form of legitimate interest as a provision under GDPR. And the law is constantly changing, and we are continuously tracking the law. So what legitimate interest does is it kind of gives flexibility to B2B marketeers that, hey, as long as, you are reaching out to your sweet spot, right? So every company that sells to another business, they have some sort of a sweet spot in the sense that, hey, I only sell to this type of industry verticals. Within these industry verticals, I only sell to companies of so-and-so size, whether it's employee size or revenue for that matter. And then within those companies, people are also selling into defined audiences, right? So if I'm selling some kind of a marketing software, maybe I'm only interested in kind of reaching out to people in the marketing division, or department. So as long as I'm selling to my sweet spot, as I mentioned, in terms of companies or accounts, and then within those accounts, as long as I'm only selling to defined departments, defined job titles, defined personas, I can leverage the provision of legitimate interest and kind of market to that audience, right? So basically what it says is you technically really don't need double opt-in. You might still need to do some type of a notification exercise into that audience, and SMARTe does that for a lot of our clients, where, based on our client's requirement, we process the data, right? Again, leveraging legitimate interest as a provision, and then we notify those prospects that, hey, your data has been processed for one of our clients. Of course, we also disclose the name of the client. Are you okay to receive an email, phone communication from the client? Yes and no. So there is a notification exercise. And after we have completed the notification exercise, which actually is a one-time notification and 2 follow-ups, so it's basically 3 touch points into that audience, then we collect the responses and share the data which have opted in and the data which has chosen not to opt out to our clients, and then they can leverage legitimate interest as a provision and market to those particular folks.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I think that's going to be encouraging for a lot of marketers who've maybe kind of heard this term or they haven't, or like you said, maybe are concerned, hey, we always need to go double opt-in and haven't been thinking about this provision for legitimate interest, which you described very well. If you are understandably marketing to a segment of the market that typically buys your product and the functional roles that typically are engaged or involved in decisions on your product or service, then you're a little bit safer there. Talk a little bit, Hemal, about double opt-in data for the DACH region in Europe, because you guys do a lot of business with European companies or customers that sell into that region. Let's talk a little bit specifically there, because you guys have been looking at different provisions, different legislation in different regions, and this one is something that folks should be aware of and thinking about as well.
Sure. So double opt-in is actually mandated under GDPR predominantly for the DACH region. And I would say even before GDPR actually kicked in, the DACH region, which is the Germany, Switzerland, and Austria, they were always asking for double opt-in, right? So the example that I gave you earlier on that, we have this client, which is German headquarters. We have been doing business since 2011. They were always asking for double opt-in because it's a German headquartered company. And not only that particular client, but we have many other, clients who are headquartered in either Germany, Austria, Switzerland. And, they were always very, very stringent. Even before GDPR, they were always asking for double opt-in data. So our advice to our customers is post, of course, implementation of GDPR or the law coming into force, we would still recommend that for the DAC region, which is again Germany, Switzerland, and Austria as countries, we would recommend that you continue to do double opt-in, and SMARTe, provides double opt-in data as well, right? For all the other countries outside of the DAC region, you would still have flexibility under the legitimate interest provision, where you can not do a double opt-in, right? Leverage the flexibility provided under legitimate interest and market to those countries. For DAC, we would advise and recommend that you go the double opt-in route, because that has always been the preference, even before, GDPR was formally kicked in.
Hey everybody, Logan with Sweetfish here. You probably already know that we think you should start a podcast if you haven't already. But what if you have and you're asking these kinds of questions? How much has our podcast impacted revenue this year? How's our sales team actually leveraging the podcast content? If you can't answer these questions, you're actually not alone. This is why Casted created the very first content marketing platform made specifically for B2B podcasting. Now you can more easily search and share your audio content while getting greater visibility into the impact of your podcast. The marketing teams at Drift, Terminus, and here at Sweetfish have started using Casted to get more value out of our podcasts, and you probably can too. You can check out the product in action at casted.us/growth. That's casted.us/growth. All right, let's get back to the show. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Thank you so much for kind of bringing some clarity to this kind of foggy issue sometimes for marketers, especially if they're newer in their career, or they're starting a new role at a company that now sells into these regions, and they have never had to face this before. The experience you guys have in working across different regions is definitely valuable. What other advice, as we kind of round out the conversation today, Hemal, would you give to marketers? Maybe your top 1, 2, 3 pieces of advice that you're giving to marketers consistently on a broad scale when it comes to data privacy. We've talked about legitimate interest when it comes to GDPR, the encouragement there. We've talked about double opt-in for the DAC region, Germany, Austria, and Switzerland in Europe. What are some of the other things that you guys just find yourselves reminding, advising, and encouraging customers on lately?
Sure, absolutely. So first of all, I would like to again, re-emphasize that SMARTe is a very, very responsible data partner. As I mentioned, 15 years in the data business and growing. And then we have a lot of marquee brand name companies. Unfortunately, I can't take a lot of names without their permission on this particular podcast, but these are some of the largest software product companies out there in the world. A lot of them are headquartered in Silicon Valley. A lot of them headquartered in London, different parts of the world. So we are a responsible data partner, and we would absolutely encourage each and every client, as well as maybe new clients and prospects, that we sign up in the future, to abide by the law, because that is our responsibility collectively, right? As vendors, as clients, as prospects, as part of this ecosystem. It's sensitive information. Private information, so that absolutely should not be abused. And however, as I mentioned, there are flexibilities under the law, and then legitimate interest is one of them. And then the other thing, which is also available in GDPR, and I think some of the clients or prospects are not even aware, is technically calling is allowed, right? So if you have a phone number of, say, one of your prospects, and even an email address of one of your prospects, if you have not gone through a legitimate interest or some kind of a consent exercise, you're not allowed to email. However, if you have a phone number, you can still call the person. So we see a lot of our clients, leveraging. A lot of them are not aware, but the guys who are aware about this provision would pick up the phone, right, and call the prospects. And if they get a connect, right, they would not start by straight away introducing their company or the product or the solution that they sell. They would just ask a very simple question to begin with. Do I have permission to speak with you, right? And then if the prospect is continuing the conversation in the sense, who are you, which company you're calling from, they would say that, hey, I'm calling from, say, XYZ company. I got your data from a third-party data partner, SMARTe. So do I have permission? So in a sense, what they're doing is, given that calling is allowed, even before they're pitching their company or the solution, they are actually seeking a consent. So this is one of the ways some of our clients are doing it. Some of the clients are also, even though emailing is not allowed, in the sense mass emailing, they would still do one-to-one emailing, right? Where they would reach out to a prospect one-to-one. So this is custom emails, not mass emails, and with a very, very custom content and messaging. I got your data from, a third-party processor, again, SMARTe, and I do know that, we don't have consent. However, we have a lot of interesting solutions for you, right? Because you are the right audience. So would you be kind enough to give us a consent? So, people are using, I think, some level of creativity. I'm not saying that this is across the board. So what I would also like to share here is some of the very large customers that we have are, of course, very, very conservative, right? Because there are some very defined fines under GDPR, right? So they want to take a conservative approach, and most of them would, just do a double opt-in, right, for most of their data requirements, just to be on the safer side. However, a lot of our mid-tier customers, a lot of our startup customers, who might not have a lot of resources and money to, go ahead and do a double opt-in for every data point or every contact, would use, of course, some of these creative mechanisms in terms of connecting. So, of course, again, not abusing, but, doing a very light connect and still seeking a permission and a consent. And if they, get an affirmative response from the prospect, then continuing the conversation, introducing themselves, introducing their company, and all the great things that, they can do for, the prospect. So, so these are some of the creative ways in how our clients are kind of dealing with GDPR.
Yeah, I think that's great context for a lot of listeners. We talked about 4 ways to really be able to still do our job as marketers and comply with the data privacy regulations, looking at what is legitimate under legitimate interest, not to be too meta there, thinking hard about double opt-in, especially in the DACH region, but then also realizing that phone calling is treated differently than emailing, as well as one-to-one emails, if you tailor your approach, can be a little bit different than mass blast emails as they're considered. So kind of 4 things to round out the conversation for folks to think about. Hemal, if anybody has enjoyed this conversation, wants to take some next steps, has some data privacy or regulation questions based on your and your team's expertise, what's the best way for them to reach out to you guys or just stay connected with some of the content that you're sharing?
The best way to reach out is, drop us an email to our marketing team, visit our website, www.smarteinc.com. There is a lot of content, a lot of resources on the website, again, around GDPR and, some of the other aspects of, lead gen and data. You can also drop us an email or send us an inquiry on the website if you want to have a detailed demonstration of our solution. We also have actually a 20-slide presentation just on GDPR. So, and I just touched upon, a few of the most important things in today's discussion. But if you want to go over, some of the content in detail, we as a company, especially myself, will be more than willing to, spend 30 minutes, 45 minutes, one-to-one, going through the details of that particular presentation and helping all of you understand the additional nuances and detailing, even in terms of, how do you comply with legitimate interest, etc. A lot of that content is available in that presentation. So if you can give us a shout out after this podcast, send a note to our marketing team or, go to our website, send us a request for a demo. We'll be more than happy to, talk to you one-to-one and, kind of share some more interesting information.
Awesome. Hemal, thank you so much for that offer, for the content that you shared today, and for the time in being a guest on the show. I really appreciate it.
So thank you so much for having me, and look forward to many such informative podcasts in the future.
I hate it when podcasts incessantly ask their listeners for reviews, but I get why they do it. because reviews are enormously helpful when you're trying to grow a podcast audience. So here's what we decided to do. If you leave a review for B2B Growth in Apple Podcasts and email me a screenshot of the review to james@sweetfishmedia.com, I'll send you a signed copy of my new book, Content-Based Networking, How to Instantly Connect with Anyone You Want to Know. We get a review, you get a free book. We both win.